Okay, it should be. Is there another one? It's going to be very delayed. Yeah. And then is it PowerPoint now? Can you hear? Yeah. Yeah, she joined it. Let's do that for a few minutes. So thanks everyone for coming. There's pizza there, plates, paper towels. Slap pizza and have a seat. We'll get started once everyone is settled down. We're done. Thanks to be the first one. That's all I have. Sure. It's educational. And the initial plan was to the community and not of them by adopting fair personals. We're going to provide some environmental challenges needing open funds and benefit. It's just a transforming boundaries. We can show that is that everyone that can do for local students. So, so it's the things are our substance address. I'm sure to figure it out. Mention that in dollar. It's sponsored. Well, what is this? You know, right. I didn't say that. I didn't say that. Well, I mean, yeah, sure. Logic. Right. Mine's up with the thing, I think it's going over. In some sense, it's Romans, yeah. That goes to us, the emptiness, standiness, so more, such a prayer, and it's very usually against control. So, see, sponsorships, stuff that's or sponsorship. Yeah, from Gannon's and so it's just another praise. So it's going to go on that. Yes. You know, you also get in it. So it's not kids off a little. But if you look at all that's what pictures. No, the way it's all in the so it's all about things. So because we've done this is and some of it is from 5 years ago, some of that it's so long. Please be here and something when you have something is fun. It's necessary. So that's good for us. So after the coordinate list, so it's can be I'm just about to share question my fault. What's new? Just one. We're going to get a little too long. Don't work her sound. Yeah, that's a sure. I have share stuff. Oh, yeah, really scared. Shit. Rest shit. She said here in a way. Some of them teach us and it's not teaching her. Like she might not even listen for me because I work at it. So it's like a consequence. I observe so long. I mean, you are interrupting. So, please. That's right. Indeed, freshman. Awesome. Well, no, I try to maybe something that yeah, sure, yeah, box. Yeah. That's a good. If you don't start from kids things my body and tell them it's working. Thanks enough for your shit. To cancel shit. It's too bad. It's true. But as to darkness, people should very yours supposed to just what's this like this? Oh, yeah. What do you think it's Austin, I just go to students hopefully to be that adventure that's those sort of things. Something else is not being actually Shutter's now where it's not. Yeah, it's going on by times to do it. What's that? You can do it. Shutter's yes. And it's so now registration. People are feeling precious. Yes. Yes. But well, Paul Warriors is that the same. No. Well, nor have the drainage one going. Sorry, the stadium on the it's like always in fact it's quite well. Since you're part of your look, I know it's not really time to flip your chance to specific day or use like something so it's not. Oh, I know that works. That's I don't know. But just something's doing it, but that's just and that's the constant walking. Are you on system? Now the calls for you are you about to use gold? It's possible. Oh. Yes.
Yeah, it's all well water. It's all sequestered. It's
Really soft.
they do come in Texas. So it's such a cold water.
Something that's
Hello.
well,
Hello. Okay, thanks everyone for coming. Welcome to Careers in Environmental Science and Engineering. This is the first event we're having. Very nice of everyone to show up and also the panel. So we have three distinguished professionals in environmental science and engineering from you. Um, do you want to? Oh, we have four.
Do you want to separate?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah. So we have. I'm gonna briefly introduce them. So we have Seth Seifert, who's an environmental manager at WAPTEC. He is in the health and safety arena. Some of you are familiar with her. Uh, she was graduate from our environmental engineering program. I'm not going to say the year. Um, so she interned at WAPTEC and she's now an environmental manager because she's been there for 15 years. Um, we have Frank Palmer. He's the CEO of Erie Waterworks. So if you're living in Erie, you're probably drinking Erie Waterworks water. He's been in water and wastewater utility sector for 25 plus years. Right? If I did the calculations correctly.
Correct.
Uh, he was senior manager of engineering at Erie Waterworks. He has now it's been a year, just over a year. Then he took over as the CEO Erie Waterworks. And I know based on his activities, he's a very strong supporter of education in our community. He's part of our environmental engineering advisory board, part of I forgot the school name, Montessori Charter School.
Correct.
Yes. So yeah, so he's very much involved in the education aspect of our community in relation to engineering. And we have Susanna um, Harris. She's Great Lakes Restoration Initiative Program Coordinator at Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. She graduated from our master's program 3 years ago.
just wow. Yeah.
Yeah. And she has a bachelor's in biology from Messiah College. She worked on several things. I'm going to let her talk about it. I know she has work experiences in different places with organizations. So, do you want to start with your own stuff first? Yeah. Yeah. Just being here. Steph, do you want to go first?
Sure. I'm gonna stand up. I'm just gonna water. So I'm Steph Seifert, the environmental manager at WabTech. So that means I'm part of the environmental health and safety department over there. So when I was going into college, trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life, I'm passionate about the environment. I'm an outdoors person. So I always pictured myself being out there in the field doing samples, doing outdoor work, stuff like that. I didn't even know that this existed as a field, honestly, until I was at Gannon and I went to a career fair and the GE at the time, WabTech bought GE back in 2019. So GE General Electric Transportation was there and they had an environmental position open and I was looking to start somewhere. So I thought, oh, that's interesting. Let me see what that's about. So that's kind of how I ended up getting into EHS, which, like I said, I didn't even realize was a thing at the time. So you think about EHS, you have environmental health and safety. So obviously I'm in the environmental leg. The health leg often includes things like industrial hygiene, ergonomics, respiratory protection programs, hearing conservation program, anything kind of with like human health type deal. And then you also have the safety section, which includes things like fire safety, crane safety, ladders, electrical safety, any of those kind of pieces of the puzzle there. So typically, if you're going to go into this type of field, you become a member of that EHS team. So career path wise, just kind of a little background, just because this kind of helps kind of understand kind of different routes you can take. So I started as an EHS intern, like I said, at GE when I was in college. I do have a couple of our interns here as well. So that got me introduced into the whole EHS kind of background where daily things look like doing inspections for various things. So tank inspections, water inspections, air inspections, things that come with our permits, which I'll get into a little bit here as well. But doing those types of inspections, doing some of our reporting. So we have for each of our permits required permitting that we need to do. So helping gather some of that data and completing some of those reports. So started that as an intern. Then I went into what they had was an EHS Operations Management Leadership Program, which is a 2-year program where for 2 years you do 4 6-month rotations, which is kind of cool because it's kind of a fast track opportunity to get experience in different locations, different genres, different support functions, that sort of thing. So I did an EHS track, so I focus on environmental health and safety. So this is where I kind of got to dabble in all of the branches of EHS. So I started in Erie here, did a safety rotation. I went down to Grove City. I did an environmental rotation down there. I stayed and did a supervisor role. Everybody who goes through the program is required to do an operations role where you actually have a team that you're supervising, a team of hourly folks out on the floor that are actually turning the wrenches and building the product, which is a very cool experience because when you're in the EHS world, you're often influencing the operations folks. They're like making the product. They're the ones that, you've got all these permits you got to comply with, but they're the ones out there operating the equipment and everything that have the limitations. So you've got to have that good working relationship with that group in order to influence them and make sure you're staying on the straight and narrow as far as all that stuff goes. So that was a really cool opportunity because oftentimes, we're asking all these operations folks to do this stuff and hey, you got to do this. And, they're trying to get product out the door. But meanwhile, you've also got to be compliant. So kind of being on the other side of that was an interesting experience where you got to understand, okay, hey, when I'm on the EHS role and I'm asking all these things to these people, this is what it feels like when you're like, oh my gosh, they want me to, quality and safety and environmental, and I got to get the product out the door and all that kind of stuff. So that was a really cool experience as well. And then Grove City also has another site, a UX site where they bring in engines, rebuild them, and send them back out. So I worked at that site as an environmental, an EHS technical advisor for a little while as well. So after that, I came back to Erie, did the environmental technical advisor role, and then when my boss retired a couple of years ago, took over as the environmental manager there. So just a little background on kind of my experience, my career path, kind of where I got to now and kind of how I dabbled in those things. But ultimately, after going through all of those, those early experiences, I decided that I liked the environmental side. I liked the environment piece, the protecting the environment, the waste reduction piece. I liked the data, the analytical piece. So I decided to kind of stay in that environmental pillar as I've kind of advanced through there. So just a little bit of background on kind of what an EHS person does, or more specifically, an environmental person does. Typically, when you think about environmental, there's 3 media you typically think about: air, water, waste, and then obviously chemicals that kind of intermingles amongst all of those pieces as well. So in the middle are just some of the kind of day-to-day type of things that I get involved with. Like I said, amongst all of those media. So permitting, we have permits to operate. So through DEP, they issue us our permits that give us, limitations, whether that's air emission wise, whether that's discharge wise from a water perspective. We have a waste storage permit, so telling us, what we're allowed to store and kind of the requirements in doing so there. With each of those permits comes compliance obligations. So they may be routine required inspections. They may be reports. They may be limitations on your equipment, such as, manometer readings, pressure differential readings, stuff like that. So working with, like I said, those operations folks to make sure we maintain compliance on all of those pieces of equipment and all of those processes that we have. Reporting, everybody loves paperwork. So we've got lots of, whether it's monthly, quarterly, semi-annual, annual reports. So which are typically a summary of most of those compliance obligations, making sure we're reporting that we've done everything we said we were going to do. Sampling, do water samples. We do air sampling. We have engine test cells, so we do stack testing on those test cells to make sure that our emissions are within our permit limits, and then also that helps us calculate our annual emissions, so generate emission factors. So a little bit of sampling on that end. Waste sampling. Anytime you're having a new process, you got to figure out how to characterize your waste. Is it hazardous? Is it non-hazardous? You do that sampling and that characterization in order to send that out. So still doing some of the sampling stuff. I guess I pictured myself doing early in the career, just not outside in the field, more in the manufacturing environment. Management of change is a big thing that we deal with. So any type of change typically has some type of environmental implication. So whether that's, hey, we want to install a new piece of equipment, it may have emissions associated with it. It may have discharge use associated with it. It may have chemicals that you're consuming. You're moving a line, so you've got to figure out how you're going to rearrange that line, what waste is coming off that line. Maybe you're making something more efficient, so you're actually doing a waste minimization project where you're trying to make things more efficient, less waste, that sort of thing. Management of change is a big thing that we struggle with because it's so broad, but something that, like I said, touches every single one of those media as well, where we're trying to make sure that, hey, we stay compliant with all of those permits. And then agency interaction. So we do interact with the EPA, we interact with the DEP, interact with the city of Erie, interact with the Erie County Department of Health. So all of the federal, state, and local agencies have frequent interactions with them, whether it's, they're issuing us a permit and we're working through that process. They do come for inspection, so they come on site and they want to check out all of our sources and our obligations with that permit, make sure we're following everything we need to do. They come in and they take samples as well. So the city of Erie comes in every quarter and takes water samples from our discharge. We have a wastewater treatment plant that discharges to the city of Erie, so they want to make sure that we're following our permit limitations. When the air inspectors come in, they'll take samples of our paint, make sure we're complying with VOC requirements. So a lot of interaction there as well. So as far as prepared slides, like I said, those are more talking points to kind of give you a little bit of background of what an EHS person's day looks like. Because like I said, this was a career path that when I was in college, I had never even heard of. I didn't realize that companies had these kind of people. It's just not something, I guess, that was really exposed or talked about. But like I said, I started down that path and found that the environmental thing is something I'm still passionate about. It's especially the minimization stuff. That's something that I really like to get behind, the sustainability piece. So a lot of times you'll also see these roles may have that sustainability component as well, where you may have an environmental and sustainability manager or an EHS and sustainability manager. So that's one path that's out there. And I don't know if you want to do questions now or at the end or however you want to handle that. But sure. Yes.
One smaller question, one bigger question. You're a tech a lot, so what do you generally, what is lab tech?
I should have started there. Yes, thank you. So we build locomotives. So, which is pretty cool because when I first started there, I'm like, okay, they build locomotives. Like they probably bolt a couple things together and let's make something, put a bunch of sub-assemblies together and they, roll it out the door. But they literally start, especially when they're building the new locomotives, start with 2 I-beams and a bunch of sheet metal. Build the platform, build the cabs. They do all the wiring where they stuff the cabs with all that wiring. They build the trucks, build locomotives. And right now, one of the big things we're doing is locomotive modernization. So that's our main bread and butter right now is we're bringing in locomotives that were out in the field for the past 20 plus years. And we're actually overhauling them, putting more efficient engines in them, giving them a kind of a makeover, that sort of thing, and sending them back out in the field to keep hauling freight. Like they're brand new, essentially, which is pretty cool too, because from getting them back to the waste minimization process, instead of somebody scrapping or junking a locomotive that's kind of past its useful life, we're able to actually give it new life while recycling a lot of the components of it, just kind of like I said, uplifting them and then setting them back out there. So that's kind of a pretty cool thing to watch also. And new product wise, battery locomotives. So we actually have some battery technology where we have locomotives. They're not even hybrids. We did hybrids a couple years ago, but these are full lithium ion battery locomotives that will haul freight with no diesel engine, which is, again, from a sustainability perspective, kind of a cool place to be going as well.
Okay, and my second more major question is, what would you say to like an environmental engineer to consider going down that path? How do you think they might be helpful in that field? And maybe they're not weren't as looking forward to maybe as potentially doing a lot of testing with humans and like you said, less in the field and stuff. So what would you say to that?
I would say internships is a big thing. I'm a big champion of internships. And I've had interns that have come work for me, and I encourage them to go do other internships as well because it's one of those opportunities where you get to go out and get to see what you enjoy, what you like. You may do an internship and you might find out, I hate this. I don't ever want to do this again. But it's an opportunity where you learned from that and you found out that, okay, hey, while it was a 3 month or 6 month ordeal, I learned that instead of coming out of school, rolling into that job, and then that's kind of your job. But also anything involving industrial hygiene is kind of a big thing as well. And you can even go on to get industrial hygiene, certified industrial hygiene certifications and stuff like that as well, which if you're looking more into like the human health component, that's kind of a more specified field that you can get into within the EHS world as well.
The more specific was what again? Sorry.
Industrial hygiene.
Or,
So that would be like anything dealing with, sampling on noise exposure, specific chemical exposure, asbestos, anything like that. Like if you're into more of the human health and that kind of perspective, that's kind of a way to kind of keep that track as well. We do have a chemical manager that works for us as well. So that does a lot of the chemical approvals. And then he also dabbles in some of that sampling and stuff like that from the industrial hygiene perspective.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So from certifications point of view for general EHS, are there any type of certifications that are useful for them to have while they're looking for jobs?
Sure. So from an EHS perspective, from an environmental perspective, I do not have my PE, just because that's not something that in my job, I'm not working as an engineer. I have an environmental engineering degree, but I don't work as an engineer, so I never needed the PE stamp. A lot of people will pursue a CSP, a certified safety professional. So if you want to kind of be well-rounded or go into more of that health and safety piece, a lot of people will pursue that CSP. And then, like I said, a CIH, a certified industrial hygienist, is another thing that a lot of people will pursue from a special kind of professional certification perspective. Yes.
And maybe a little kind of dumb question, but that you're work for the company and you are hired by the company. So I'm just kind of curious if there's so-called the EHS kind of company and just manage of the multi number of just small workplaces, or by the nature of for the nature of the company, you must be hired by company to work on the EHS piece for the company.
So I am a WebTech employee, but maybe what you're asking is consulting wise, we do
Yes,
use
yes.
some consultants. Yes. So like I said, I don't have a PE. I'm not a PE, but some of our requirements do require a PE. So like our spill procedure, our SPCC plan, it requires a professional engineer to stamp that plan to say yes, that all of our secondary containment and our spill handling procedures, chemical handling procedures meet the requirements. So that does require a PE stamp. So we do hire consultants to do some of those things as well. So again, nobody gets here from a consulting perspective, but that's kind of another path that you can go down as well. And we do hire air consultants. We hire to do some of our reporting, our tier 2 and our TRI reporting, which is chemical inventory reporting. We do hire external help to do some of that stuff as well. Yep. All right. Any other questions? All right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Andrew.
Okay.
I do not have slides, but I have a paper with notes. So, again, my name's Craig Palmer. I'm currently the CEO of the Erie Waterworks, and I'm not originally from Erie, but I've been here more than half my life. Quick show of hands. Who knows what they want to be when they grow up? I know. Some, right? I didn't. I thought I knew. I thought I wanted to be a math teacher. I was good at math. I didn't have to work at it that hard, but I enjoyed doing it. I liked the fact that there was you could verify your answer. It really wasn't subjective. It is or it isn't, right? You could find a way to figure that out. So I like the definitiveness and absoluteness of that. And my father happens to be a nuclear engineer. And so when I told them I wanted to be a math teacher, they said, "That's great. That's great. But why don't you just try engineering? See if you like it. You can always fall back on teaching." So I thought, I'll try it. Now I'm the last of four. So my brother and sister, they started in engineering, ended up in education. And maybe that's why my dad got the idea. The third brother ended up sticking with engineering. He has his PhD. He's a structural engineer. He specializes in earthquake. So he works in San Francisco area. For me, I started and I continued, right? But I really wasn't sure what I wanted to do. For me, it was a process of elimination. Okay. My worst course by far was electrical engineering. So that's not happening, right? Moving parts, mechanical engineering, just less interesting to me. So I started to focus more on the civil. I like that, but then I realized I don't like bridges. I don't like that stuff. And so I ended up specializing in hydraulics and hydrology. That just became more interesting to me. There were some professors I had that were a little more dynamic. And so, call it what you will, certain things drew me to that. And sometimes there's not an easy answer as to why. You just kind of feel it. And I remember, taking the 400 level water and wastewater course. And I never at any point thought, boy, I could get a job in this, right? You're kind of trying to get through the class in a sense. But I never ever imagined like, yeah, there's tons of jobs in water and wastewater and other utilities, but the fact is they are. Um, there are plenty of jobs, and when you talk about the market and the job market, you know, some things you might be a little uneasy about. Is there going to be a future in that? Is AI going to take over that? All these different things. Utilities and basic necessities will always be there. Always need people to be producing, distributing potable drinking water, dealing with the wastewater that we all make, that WAPTEC delivers, all of those things. We need to do all those things. So again, for me, it was kind of a process of elimination. What do I kind of like the least and start eliminating that? And then it was a little bit fortuitous. I did an internship with PennDOT for a semester. I highly recommend you try to intern in something related to your field, even if it's loosely. And whether or not it's an internship, summer job, call it what you will. Experience, some relative experience is better than none, right? So if you're dying to work at Waldemere and be a lifeguard, you can do that too, right? It doesn't mean you're not going to be successful, but certainly I think it also helps you figure out what you do and don't like. I think that's a big part of it too. So my career path, I ended up, I wanted to move to Chicago, but I didn't. I was kind of dating a girl from this area, and so I started looking for jobs around here. And I was fortunate enough to get hired with a consulting firm. So I did work in consulting for about 9 years, doing water and wastewater engineering. I did that for literally all the local sewer and water authorities that are around here. As a young engineer, I spent time in the grit chamber at the wastewater treatment plant, where the worst of the worst comes in at the entry point. I ad nauseum looked at videos of sanitary sewer rehabilitation before and after. Here's the dirty sewer. Here's the cracked joints. We rehabbed it. I'd have to verify and watch it, And so, did I love that? No, not at all. You never will love everything you do, right? But you get through it, right? It helped me get to that next level. So I did water wastewater engineering for 9 years, and the consulting world's different, right? You're trying to find your next job, right? You got to keep the money coming, right? And so there's different roles you can play in that, right? And everybody doesn't want every role, right? So some people, they just want to be an engineer at their computer, working on AutoCAD, working on designs. They don't want to deal with the client. Not everybody wants to do that. And so it's important to, as you navigate, figure out, do I want to work outside? Do I want to work in the office? Do I want to do both? There's plenty of jobs in construction. You could be outside all the time. Um, Eventually, as I progressed, I began to really get involved with our clients. I became a client service manager and I started to attend their monthly meetings and give them consulting advice, as well as do the design projects that they ultimately decided they wanted to do. But what I didn't like about that was they were always kind of telling us, this is what we want to do, right? We'd give them the options and they would tell us. I wanted to be on that side. I wanted to be calling those shots. And so the opportunity came up to become a senior manager at the Erie Waterworks. Now, at that point in time, I only had 8.5 years experience. And the gentleman who was in that role, I happened to meet from getting involved in some local organizations and things like that. And he called me and said, I think you should apply. I said, there's no way. There's no way that my prior boss, Paul, at the time, I said, there's no way Paul would hire me. I'm too young. He said, you'd be surprised. He said, he wants some young blood in there. He wants new ideas. He's sick of the old way of doing it, And so I sprung at the opportunity and I was successful. And so I spent 17 years in that role. And what I really liked about it was I was given the opportunity, and I asked this up front: do we do any design work in house? No, we don't. And so at this point in time, we do. We have a robust geographic information system. We have 4 different folks that are working on that. It supports our entire water system. We have 784 miles of pipe, 4,140 fire hydrants, 13,000 valves, 60 plus thousand service connections. We have assets galore. We have, I think, 5 different engineers that work at the Erie Waterworks, not just in the engineering department. There's one in the operations department. There's one in the laboratory, a Gannon graduate. One of our new engineers, Hannah Barawa, many of you may know, she graduated from Gannon. And we actually brought her on before she graduated on a part-time basis. We knew that that she was the choice, and so we were able to kind of integrate her a little bit easier. So we now do a lot of design work. We don't even barely hire surveyors anymore. Our GIS is so robust that we have built the capacity. So I love the opportunity to build that, to build something. In that time frame, I was able to manage our capital improvement program, for which I've, in my time period, have spent close to $300 million on construction projects. We do master plans. We figure out what we want to do. We design some in-house. We hire consultants. So the consulting end of thing it is cool, but being on kind of the public side, making some of those decisions, I've really enjoyed quite thoroughly. And so, think about what your path. Do you want to be behind a desk, not dealing with clients? Do you want to be out there selling the work? Do you want to be that intermediary for managing a project? Lots of things to think about, and you don't know that now. And as your career progresses, you may change your mind. Like, hey, I want something different. I'm sick of being outside in the cold. I want a desk job now. So there's lots of opportunities. I think in terms of kind of key skills, for me, when we look at hiring, and everyone we hire, I do a final interview with, and what I look for. You're not going to remember everything you learn in class. You're just not, right? But you have to be resourceful, right? Because at the end of the day, no matter where you work, you're a problem solver and you collaborate. That's what you do everywhere. So you have to be a problem solver. And so you're in fields that are making you be that. And so I think you have to embrace that and realize that every problem equals a solution. Right. And you are that solution. You got to find that. And problems are great because if there weren't, they wouldn't need solutions and they wouldn't need us. So you have to look at it as an opportunity in that regard. So being resourceful when you don't otherwise know the answer. I don't know. I can't find it. Not good enough. work harder, right? Talk to more people, do more research. I think that's critically important. She mentioned passion. I think passion is so important, no matter what you're doing. Um, and it might just be passionate trying to do a good job. You may not like the job you have to do, but being able to get it done, put your name on it, and say, "I did this to the best of my ability," I think should help you sleep better at night when you put your head on the pillow. Um, and I will say, if you lack passion, then don't lack persistence, because you may not love it, you may not be able to muster the passion for it, but if you're not persistent, it's going to get noticed, and you might not be kept around, for example. So you got to keep working on the problem solving. Um, so I think some of those things I try to ask people about that, right? I think that's important. In terms of certification certificates, I'm an engineer. I Shortly after I started my career, I began to take classes to get my MBA. And quite frankly, to some extent, when I did that, there really weren't a lot of master's degree programs around, and my company would pay for the majority of it. So I thought, why not try it, right? I saw in my engineering firm the people at the top mostly were engineers, but that was starting to change. Business minded people were starting to take over senior leadership. But I saw a lot of business related people who were engineers that had their MBAs. I thought, well, that would be great. And I can tell you, the MBA was great for me. Focused on leadership classes, marketing, things like that, and it really helped me be well versed. I will tell you this: public speaking, not everybody loves it, but you probably need to do it. So you probably want to work on that. Writing is so key. And I don't care if ChatGPT can rewrite it. It can still turn out like crap. Trust me. I read plenty of stuff that might be a little polished, but it's not good because it's just not right. So you need to be able to become a good writer, and it doesn't happen overnight. I think, having honest feedback and criticism with each other has helped, beyond stylistic things. But I think communication, being able to communicate, is critically important. Um, for me, we kind of talked about the PE. Do you need it? Do you not need it? Some fields you don't. For me, there's not a lot of things I have to stamp, but a set of drawings sometimes, if I'm the head designer, certain permits for DEP have to be stamped. And so even if your field, if it's not common or if you don't need it for your job, I would still consider it. I think being able to achieve that, whether it's the EIT, the PE, whatever that may be, shows that you were able to kind of conquer that, get through that. So I think that's a feather in your cap. It shows your versatility, and in some cases, you may not need it all the time, but an employer may say, when we do need it, it's nice to have that, nice to have it in house, and not have to hire a consultant that has that. So it's certainly something to consider. Um, so I would say this: as I just spent a year as the new CEO, a whole different set of challenges. I really thought I would have a hard time pulling away from the really hardcore technical work. But I have. I just found new challenges to take up my time, and they all need to be solved. All these problems. But I do get to dabble in the technical. I do look at final drawings. I do still get asked about things. In my role, quite frankly, with as many retirements as we have, you get hired. You're the young one. Everybody's been around longer. Now I'm one of the ones that's been around longer than many. So it's weird how that flips, but it certainly happens. But you get mentors, ask for advice. Don't be afraid to be inquisitive and ask questions, and really try to find your passion. That's something you should never stop doing. And happy to answer any questions now or at the
So I was not able to get an internship any time during my college when I was graduating.
Mhm.
And one of the things I am trying to figure out is whether I should try and go for an internship first for like a summer or for like half a year and then try going to become a full-time engineer, or if I should just try and become a full-time engineer. In your experience, especially being a consultant, which do you think generally is better, more likely to get you hired and make things easy?
Yeah, I think looking at all opportunities, don't sell yourself short. You may not, if you put all your eggs in the one basket of the full-time job, for example, maybe you're limiting yourself. So I think if you expand your realm of possibilities, and even, you may end up having to, in some sense, accept employment or get a job doing something maybe you're not crazy about. But sometimes it's about getting your foot in the door, and who knows, maybe it's not as bad as you thought. Maybe it leads into other opportunities within that same firm. Um, and so things move quickly. Her boss retired. And next thing you know, her boss could have left before, right? Got another job. So you never really know how the dominoes may fall. But trying to put yourself in a position to 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 be ready for the next step is important. Mhm. Yeah.
What were some of your like day to days as a consultant working as a consultant?
Yeah. So we had a smaller office in Erie. In fact, it's now one of your new residence halls at 8th and Sass. I don't remember the name of it, but 155 West 8th. So anyway, um, every day was different. But early in my career, because we were a small office, I wore many hats. So my very first design project, I physically did the survey. I physically did the CAD work, um, designed it, advertised it for construction, took bids, did the awards, inspected the installation. Now that's not common. I mean, at a big firm, you go somewhere, you're not doing all those things. You're doing one of those things. So for me, being in that smaller environment where you had to wear many hats was almost like multiple internships at once. I was able to have to learn all those things and figure out what I like the most, right? And so that really helped me as well. But big companies too afford opportunities like that. You don't maybe wear as many hats as you do, but every day was different. I mean, we would have multiple design projects at any given time. I would have different roles in them. I might be managing one where there's a team engineer designing it, finding out, making sure that we're satisfying the client's needs. Um, Other projects, I might be the lead designer. And so, every honestly, in our office, I was the default IT guy. I mean, I had to call Chicago and troubleshoot the issues for everybody older than me that didn't know how to figure it out. And so, you know, saying yes to those things allowed me to keep. Well, I didn't love it, but why not? Okay, but literally every day is different, and I think there certainly can be some monotony, but I think a job like that definitely has a lot of varied um, work. Every day is a little bit different. So, visiting job sites, things like that. Yeah.
Um, I would have like asked you to how you get it to the point to get that position of being a CEO. Putting the level of like more weight, more of like personal thing, like what I'm trying to CEO, like what attributes make someone climb up to the way to get the most views.
Yeah, because it's not for everybody, right? It's just not. And so for me, one of the and I'm a two-time Penn Stater. I love Gannon. We do a lot of stuff with Gannon. So, but there's a lot of love to spread around. But at the MBA, I got it at Penn State. There was a couple professors, Mike Brown, for example. He taught the leadership classes. There's a difference between leadership and management, for sure. I like the bigger picture of the leadership end of things. And so part of it too is, kind of being, there's all kinds of different types of leaders. I feel like more of a servant leader. Like I relate to people well. I've always had jobs, whether it was a grocery store clerk, a waiter, or whatever, where I was interacting with people. So I enjoy that, and I enjoy helping to solve their problems. And so, earlier in my, honestly, when I was offered the job at Erie Waterworks, my boss at the time, said, you know, if you play your cards right, you could be the next CEO. Now that was 17 years in the making. I had to wait. So I wasn't like clamoring for it because I saw it as like the more time I can spend doing what I'm doing, the more I can prepare myself to get ready. Um, and so those were the types of things. But I can tell you, I mean, I knew when he was going to be retiring, and who knows, he had opportunities to leave before that. So, you know, it could have happened even sooner. But I really prepared myself. I put a strategic plan together. I put a plan together so that when it came time, I would have the answers and the strategy to drive the kind of improvement I wanted to see. But for me, part of it is like the passion of it. Like I grew to love water. When I got the job at Erie Waterworks, over time, I just grew to fall in love with water, what we do. We're the only utility that delivers a product for consumption. Water is life. You literally can't live without it. And everything we do, it's somewhere or another involves water. So um, that passion that grew within me kind of fueled that fire. And as I saw different organizations, I thought I want to be a leader of this organization that's taking it in great direction. So, you know, I don't know that that quite exactly answers the question, but there's no one skill set that makes a good CEO, right? But I think being well rounded, I paid attention in my human resources class. Why would an engineer need that, right? Because now, I mean, for 8 months, we operated in my first year without an HR person, right? And so what did I do? I could have hired a consultant to do all that, but I dug deep. We did research. We asked for advice when we needed it, but I figured I want to learn it as best I can. So when we do bring on the HR manager, I know what's going on. So, not everybody would do that, but I wanted to know because I wanted to be effective managing that area of the business. So, and I do that continually, trying to learn more about each department and those things and how I can help add value to what they need to do.
You mentioned that you wanted to move to Chicago
Mhm.
and then start staying.
Yep.
As young students, of course, we have a lot for us to take. And what what are people who don't really have direct path? Because I'm always afraid of opening a door. Wasn't
Sure. I totally understand. Um, Chicago, my parents were from there, always visited there. I loved it. Um, and I had opportunities there, but as I spent some time here and interviewed, I thought, well, I don't know where this relationship is going. Plus, I had friends in Erie. I had family in Pittsburgh. I had family in Eastern PA. So I thought, well, you know what? Let me just give this a shot. And of course, I never left. Um, but I could have, right? I could have broken up, could have hated my job, and then, so I like, for me, it's better to regret something you did than something you didn't do. And so I think you try to take the best opportunity at the time. You may not want to move to Utah, but there may be an awesome job that you can't pass up. You may end up hating Utah, so you leave, but you got your foot in the door, gainful employment, and you go from there. So it can be tricky um, to leave what you're familiar with, um, for sure. And so I I didn't go all the way, right? I kind of went part of the way and just loved the area. I just found I loved the area, and so I chose not to leave. And I've had opportunities to go elsewhere, um, but just chose not to. Mhm. Yeah.
of staying in Erie. I know it's become kind of popular, especially with like young workers right now, to kind of like hop around different places. As someone who stayed with the company so long, what do you think are like the benefits of staying with the company versus kind of hopping around?
Yeah, I mean, I think stability in some part is certainly part of that. But for me, when I see resumes and there's a balance. When I see they've had 8 jobs, it's a little bit of a red flag. Like why? I get it, you're trying to move up, but I don't necessarily want to be a stepping stone. However, things happen, right? You find different opportunities and you move along. So I think you wanna find the culture, the environment that maybe suits you the best. It's hard to be that selective at times. Um, but certainly I think, quality of life, which your work life is certainly part of that, is important. And if you find yourself in a spot where, there are times where you have to move around quite a bit before you find what you really like. And so, again, I would, if that person who had 8 jobs, ends up saying the right things and interviewing well, they may never leave us. Um, so I think, yeah, there is a tendency to do a lot of hopping around. But certain companies, ours is one, our retention rate is very high. Um, a lot of people come, they usually don't leave. Um, so, but yeah, I think when there's better opportunities that come along, you got to seize the day. If there's a balance, you don't want to hop around every 6 months. So.
Yes. Would you like to just share your insight or tips on how to just kind of the prepare your resume or CV? Or do you get to some of the viewpoint and recruiter's viewpoint?
Yeah, I mean, from a resume standpoint, I think, certainly the more you can articulate why you want the position and what you know about the position, the better. And to just have like this is the resume and that's what I give to everybody, I think is probably not the move. I think you want to cater it, and you probably know this as best you can to what you're looking for. When people come in and I say, "What do you know about the Erie Waterworks?" And they go, "Well, nothing. That's not good." If how do I know you really want to work here? You don't really even know about this, right? So I think you know making the investment in time to learn about that, I think, is important. Um, but yeah, I think the resume, anything you can do to gear your classwork, coursework, jobs, extracurricular activities to what you're seeking, the better off will be. Um, and yeah, I think kind of knowing what the job is and seeking to learn more about that's important. Um, so yeah, like I ask people, do you drink tap water? Somebody says I only drink bottled water. I'll probably end the interview right there. But so I mean, I wouldn't. We'd get through it, but it'd be a little bit faster. So yeah. Mhm.
Get more towards association with the staff. So what advice would you give engineers and scientists become part of professional organizations? How helpful would that be?
They're super helpful. So I'm actually the membership chair of the American Waterworks in Pennsylvania. And so, I got involved earlier in my career. They have conferences, there's local workshops. At one point I was trying to start a Gannon chapter. Um, there was a time period where I was, offering free memberships and I think we had 2 people sign up. So, but I can tell you, we have a young professionals group as part of it. They just had a Quizno event in Pittsburgh. There was like 150 people there and they're networking and learning and sharing stories. So I think there's usually in a lot of these associations kind of young professionals groups where you can network and kind of share stories and help each other. but it allows you to get involved and learn more about the associations and being at the higher level in the association. So I went through the chair, vice chair, all that stuff. Um, these organizations are always trying to engage the YPs, the young professionals. They want to know, they want to clue in the next generation. They want to know what you think now, how they can be modern, how the culture can fit to you. Um, but also they know that it's the next generation. So we have to begin mentoring sooner. So it's not like just a money grab. It's good to get involved to learn more about whatever that association is, right? And so there's just a lot of benefits, I think, to doing that, and it's opened the door for many other opportunities for me, our organization, and otherwise. The amount of information sharing. I mean, I do it almost every day with another water utility in the state or in the country. Um, so to share stories, to share lessons learned. Hey, how do you guys do this? It's invaluable because it helps you climb that learning curve quicker. It's all about that resourceful component, having the resources you need. And it's not just one type. It's people, it's information, it's all those things. So the networking and the connections you make in associations, I think, can be extremely valuable.
Does Erie Waterworks currently offer any internships? And if they do, is it primarily targeted towards engineers, or would there be internship opportunities available for environmental science?
So we actually we actually had just made an offer to a Gannon student for an engineering internship, and that individual passed it up. So I think there is still an opportunity that will be bringing that back to the forefront. We have had some opportunities in our laboratory in the past. So, in terms of kind of environmental and such, those are really the main areas that we've, had some of those internships. We've had GIS internships. We used to have an accredited internship with Edinburgh before they wiped the program away. Uh, but so, we're kind of open to the possibility of, what other value can be added with something like that. So if you sent me a value proposition of how your skill set in environmental science could help our water utility, maybe that's something we might do. But those are kind of the opportunities that we have right now. So yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Great. So mine's a little different, and I hate to say it, but I am the person that jumped around a lot. But there's reason, and I'll get into that. Was this saved to?
Same PowerPoint. And just
Oh,
Yeah.
oh my
It's in
gosh!
the PowerPoint.
Thank you. Wow, I didn't even see it there. You would think I didn't make it. Okay. Great. So I'm Susanna Harris. I work for the DEP as the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, or GLRI, program coordinator. So what I do in this position is essentially work on writing policy and working with Canada and all the Great Lakes states to create collaborative policy, basically because all these lakes are connected, right? Like we want to create some type of consistency, so we work together to create policy about all kinds of things. So right now, some of our biggest areas are diversions, so removing water from Lake Erie. A big one is environmental justice, climate change planning for the city and for the Great Lakes regions, invasive plants, invasive aquatics. Drinking water is a big one. How we look to have safe drinking water from the lakes, not in for like, for the next 10 generations, So it's something that we're looking into. And my position's really important because, you know, we do have a percentage of the Great Lakes that comes back every year. I believe it's about like 2% from rain and snow melt, but everything else is a gift from the glaciers. And so we want to keep that. We want to protect that and make sure that we don't use it all up. So that's essentially what I do. But it took me a decent bit to get where I'm at. I started this position about a month ago. And I've been kind of working for this. This is kind of my dream job for about 10 years. So it's a little different, but I do have picked up some tips and tricks along the way for sure. So I'm just going to go into, you know, what everyone else went into, my career path, key skills, certifications. I have some internship ideas for you all. Excuse me. Internship ideas for you all, and then just some general advice that I've kind of learned along the way. Okay, so I jumped around a lot. I started at Messiah College with some seasonal positions, so that's my first excuse. I did stream bank restoration. I made rain gardens. I managed an aquaponic greenhouse and taught high schoolers how to manage that greenhouse. They were actually my employees. It taught me a lot about communication because if you've ever worked with high schoolers, you realize what to say and what not to say, and you learn it the hard way. And you know, those were excellent jobs. I got those because I had a really, really good connection with a professor. He actually came to my wedding. Like he was, he's a good friend of mine now. So it's really important to talk to your professors. They've been in your shoes. They're often aware of great opportunities too. So when I hear of good opportunities, I often reach out to professors, program heads, and you know, try to get this information passed to you all. So I highly recommend. Okay, so after college, I had some seasonal positions and some not seasonal positions. So I started out as a manager of a greenhouse because that was kind of a, you know, an easy step from the aquaponics gig that I had. But I lived in DC at the time and I wanted to move to Erie, believe it or not. So I worked at Chevy Chase Club for a little while until I got an opportunity to move up here. And I worked as a utility forester. That was a job I had never heard of. That is essentially working on transmission right of ways, so the really large transmission lines, and inspecting all the vegetation in that right of way. Basically, there's a ton of restrictions and regulations for right of ways. You want to make sure that you're not going to cause a forest fire or a mass outage. It's pretty important, and sometimes it was kind of hard to forget as I was just walking the lines looking at trees to make sure they wouldn't hit, you know, but it was a great job. I flew in helicopters to, you know, oversee the lines. But it was a very solitary job. I was by myself and did my own work almost, I would say 90% of the job, which is great. But I kind of was like, you know what? I'm going to try traditional timber marking and forestry work. And I hated it. Um, it's a great opportunity, but it just wasn't for me. That's when I worked at Forcon and I actually was laid off because of COVID. I don't know if you all remember, but right before COVID, we had a huge timber crash. There were a lot of political things going on, and basically we couldn't sell timber. So I was laid off. It was a blessing. I didn't, I just, it didn't work, but I didn't want to quit. So that worked out for me. And I joined Ecological Field Services. That's a company based in Waterford. I'm a little biased. I do have to have full disclosure. My husband also helps manage that company, so I have great things to say, but I'm extremely biased. I worked for them a lot of times. They had a ton of seasonal positions. They have internships and they have an internship program for students. And that was mainly removing invasive plants. A lot of environmental science, especially entry level, is field work, and a lot of it right now is invasive plant removal and habitat restoration. It's great. It's hard work. You see a lot of really cool things. All of these pictures are from when I did that on my lunch breaks or so. I would, you know, go out and take pictures of the plants. I restored habitats. It was really rewarding, but it was really, really hard. I did it for about 5 years and I was ready. I was like, you know what? I need a change. I can't do this forever. And I was looking at all of my different jobs and I thought, you know what? None of these were my dream careers, but they did provide something really helpful to me. And I can tell you now that everything that I did or every job that I had has provided me with something that I use now. So it's scary sometimes to take that step and pick something. And sometimes it's scary to walk away. And sometimes you absolutely hate it, but it's still, I think, valuable. And you can't live regretting, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that. Specifically with Forcon, with timber marking. I learned about the permitting process to drag timber across a stream or to work in a wetland. Essentially, with DEP, state and federal regulation, you cannot disturb these areas without a permit. And I learned that when I was with Forcon. But eventually, during COVID, I decided to go to Gannon. I got my master's in environmental science. This program was amazing for me. It gave me some time to make connections, to learn from the experts, and really refine what I loved. It gave me an opportunity to kind of bring everything that I already had. I had over 5 years of experience and work after my undergrad. And I was like, this is what I have, and what can I do with it now? So when students ask me, should I go to grad school right away or should I wait? I often say, you know what? Like, you see what you want to do, but you don't have to rush into it. Because I was a biology major and I honestly, it was so broad. I was pre-med. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I just knew I hated the human body and I was like, what am I supposed to do now? I dropped pre-med my senior year and then jumped into some ecology stuff, but like I needed that time. So it's definitely really specific to you and what you need. While I was at Gannon, I took the opportunity to take an internship with DCNR at Goddard State Park. I knew that I wanted to be done with consulting and field work, and I wanted to get into the state system. One of the ways to do that is through internships. It's really, and I'll get into it later, but it's kind of hard to get in, and it's a really frustrating process. But this was an excellent way to get in. And it was a really fun job. DCNR is so fun. I had a great time. I just played in the water all the time, really. And I worked at Gannon for Dr. K doing microplastics research, which was so valuable. If you have the opportunity to do research, do it. If you have the opportunity to write a thesis or something like that, do it. It was sometimes it was a very dark time for me. Other times, I had it in view of like, this is what I need to do. One thing that I've learned through all of the interviews that I've had and through all the jobs that I've had, especially in my upper level jobs, they ask for writing samples. And to have research that I helped create and a massive paper to show, hey, this is what I did. I, with a team created this and I was able to see something from start to end. Now, it doesn't have to be master's level research, but just something to show and keep on to that. Don't just throw that away right after you graduate because I wouldn't be able to recreate something like that now. So, okay, so we're getting to present day. I jumped into the DEP after Gannon. And I believe strongly that it was because of the connections that I made through the environmental sector in this area. I know a lot of people in this area, a lot of people who work for the government. And a lot of times people say it's not what you know, but who you know. And I don't agree. I think it's important to have, knowledge and background of everything and have experience. But networking in environmental science is so important. There are a lot of environmental scientists out there, and I don't want to sound depressing because it's a really, really great field. I love it. I would never do it any other way. But when I first got into it, there weren't a lot of jobs and I really had to fight. And networking was great. And I'll get into it later, or I'll just get into it now. If you have an organization that you really want to work for and they don't have jobs, but they have volunteer days or days when you can go to their meetings. A lot of like, I'm on the French Creek Valley Conservancy Board, and we have board meetings every month. A lot of those are public or events. Go to those. Make your name known. Join the committees or do something like that. If you want to work at a state park, go talk to the manager. It was really hard for me to just be like, you know what? I can just go talk to people. And I had a past boss that came to me and was like, do you want this job? I was interviewing for it. And I said, yes. He said, well, you need to come talk to me. And that was another really big thing is if you want a job, there is nothing wrong with reaching out to that hiring manager and talking to them. Honestly, it's gotten me pretty far to meet with them, talk to them, ask them why they love their jobs, and move on from there. I felt like it was kind of, I don't know, like kind of like sucking up to them a little bit. I felt really uncomfortable. I walked in and I was bright red and sweating, and I was like, I really want that job, and I've definitely refined it since then, but like it is super important. Okay, so I started as a conservation district field representative for the region. So our region has 14 counties, and I represented all of those 14 counties with the DEP and was basically a liaison for the districts. Districts can become delegated by the DEP to fulfill different parts of the regulations and laws. So specifically Chapter 105 and 102. I'm not sure. I believe I maybe learned about it here when I was at Gannon, but it's Chapter 105 is for anything to do with wetland disturbance, stream crossings, encroachments, dams, obstructions. And Chapter 102 is anything to do with NPDES is lumped into their stormwater, construction, anything to do with essentially just soil going into your waterways. So districts actually are delegated to take care of a lot of that for the DEP. Districts do it, and so do consultants. I highly recommend you check out your districts if you're interested in environmental science. I didn't know about them. I'm embarrassed to admit this. I didn't know about them until right before my interview for this position, and I wish I knew about them sooner. I'm even more embarrassed because they were a partner in our research, but it's okay. They're great jobs, and they cover a lot of different fields. They actually, some of them have PEs on staff to review plans. Those are mainly in the larger counties. We don't have any in our region, but if you wanted to stay in Pennsylvania or go to another state, a lot of districts do have engineers on staff as well. Okay. And then I became an environmental protection compliance specialist for the environmental cleanup program, specifically in storage tanks, so above ground and underground storage tanks. This job was great. It really taught me, how to communicate and communicate clearly. Because if somebody owes you $20,000, they're going to pick apart every little thing that you say. They're going to try to weasel their way out or find, something in what you said. Or, if they don't trust you or if they want to argue it, they'll take it to court. So you just, it taught me how to be very specific. It taught me how to write legal documents. I thought I was a really good writer, and then my first meeting, I was just torn apart with one of my legal documents. And it taught me how to work with lawyers, which was excellent. Those jobs often pop up with the state. I highly recommend them. It's hard. It's hard to be the bad guy. It's hard to get yelled at on the phone for a half an hour. But it teaches you regulations, it gets you in the system, and it also is super important. And it was a really great job. Honestly, I would have stayed in it for a really long time, but my current job popped up, and I was like, you know what? I gotta go for it. I jumped around, but within the state, it typically is seen a lot, especially right now, because about 30% of our workforce is retiring. So we are currently all in this mad rush to jump up into these positions that are vacant because we don't know when they're going to open up again. So it puts you all in a great position because that 30% within the next, I believe, 5 years, we're going to be seeing a huge, vacant hole in our agencies. We're going to see that at the federal level too. Okay, so key skills. GIS and environmental science is super important. I never took a GIS course, and I regret it. I've learned it, but if I had that on my resume, that would have really helped me. Wetland delineation. If you want to do anything in streams and in wetlands, anything with a lot of different consultants in the area, this is super helpful. Now, you don't need to go out and take a course, but you can. But you can also look online, do your research, and if you know something about this, it is going to be a huge step up, especially for a lot of the biology positions within the DEP. It's just a great skill to have. It teaches you about plants, about hydrology, and about the soils. So you have a full encompassing view of the environment. Reading maps and drawings. It's super important. I'm not an engineer, but I have to look at their drawings. I'm the first person that they come to, or I used to be. And it's really bad when we get new hires that don't know how to read a map. We had a coworker that got lost the other day because she didn't know how to read a map. And it's just a little frustrating. And I'm going to sound like a broken record here. It's been brought up, but public speaking is super important. I remember was early, and I'm a rambler, so I'm going to check my time here. I remember early in my position as field rep, I didn't know my audience. And I was standing in a big group of dairy farmers. And I proudly announced, because I'm a blabber too, I don't like milk, I drink oat milk. Little did I know that I'm actually proposing regulation to a bunch of dairy farmers that I just met that I was going to work with for the next 2 years. Is humiliating. So one, knowing who you're speaking to, knowing your audience, but also being comfortable. Public speaking has been in all of my jobs, but especially with DEP because we're working with the public. Science is simply science without getting it out to the world. You know, you have to be able to communicate it. Regulations, we have to communicate them. They're backed by science, and we need to help people know why we have them. Technical and legal writing is super, super important. Again, I mentioned the writing samples that were requested. Usually I'm asked for 2 samples. I usually try to give one that's super technical and then one that I kind of did on my own initiative or like something that I was working on in work. Working on for work. There we go. So just to provide a well-rounded view of my writing, but that's something to work on if you don't feel like it's your strong suit. I just think it's super important. I mentioned networking and interviewing. When I was an undergrad student, I was offered a ton of interviewing classes and opportunities through my university, but I thought I was too cool for them. And I wish I took those because those are so important. If you think about it, when you go into an interview, probably all the other candidates have the same qualifications as you. So, especially with environmental science, it is competitive. So when you go in, you want to be prepared to be like, okay, you're qualified, but communicate it and have a good impression. Sometimes, especially in my first jobs, I had no idea what I was doing. I spoke with the hiring managers before, but I didn't know anything. But I gave it my all. I was super honest and open, and it just helps so much. Again, talk to the hiring managers, do your research ahead of time. Okay, for certifications, they're going to be job specific. PA pesticide application certification is something that if you do anything in the field, you're likely going to get. You can get a ton of different certifications based on what type of work you're going to be doing. If you're going to do power line work, you'll be a certified arborist. If you're going to do anything within environmental cleanup, brownfields, anything hazardous, you're going to go through OSHA HAZWOPER trainings. You can take those ahead of time. That looks great. I don't know if you have to, I don't know how you access them, if you have to pay for them or not. It's one of the perks with going through, you do. Okay. Well, they're super important, super great to have. Or if you've taken courses here, make sure to outline that maybe you don't have that certification, but you have experience. Wetland delineation. There are a lot of private courses that you can take. There's one called Plant Camp. hold on, Swamp School, Plant Campus, something else. Swamp School. And it is a couple day course where you can go out in the field with experts and learn delineation. It became a hobby after my husband went to that course, and then he just wanted to do it all the time. He loved it. So it was a good course. And then you're going to have a variety of field safety and wilderness first aid trainings. If you want to work in the field, it's super great if you have some of these first aid, CPR, chainsaw training is super important. But you can get that on the job too. I'm jumping around a lot in a lot of different fields, and I apologize, but it just represents what I did, and I just really needed to refine my interests. Okay, so for internship opportunities, I asked around my office. So I work at the Tom Ridge Environmental Center, so we have a lot of internships with all the different agencies. But this is kind of what I came up with. County conservation districts are great. They have internships over the summer. They will tie you into a lot of other state agencies and federal agencies, and they oftentimes have AmeriCorps staff on the districts, and those are internships as well. Army Corps of Engineers are super, super, really, really interesting internships, especially around here. They do a lot of aquatic invasive plant monitoring and removal, especially in Pymatuning. They have some interest in Lake Erie. Basically, anything that's going to cause transportation issues or any other type of issue, they're going to go out there and partner with a lot of organizations to take care of that. It's super interesting. The Pennsylvania Outdoor Corps is under the Student Conservation Association. This is going to be a lot of field work, a lot of invasive work, trail maintenance, which is really fun. And a lot of organizations really love to see this, especially in the DEP, but also any type of field work that you may want to do. Look at your state parks. They often have multiple internships. DEP internships. You can email me. I have my email. I can send you when they come out. We have 2 in Meadville. And well, more in Meadville actually, 2 in the Waterways and Wetlands program, but multiple in Meadville and multiple in Erie. They're great opportunities. We often hire our interns, and you'll be able to do all kinds of cool stuff. You'll be able to do stream surveys. You'll be able to review permits. It's great. You'll be able to go out in some compliance cases. You'll be able to look at hellbenders. You'll be able to do it all. Within TREC, there's the Regional Science Consortium. I had to mention Ecological Field Services. Again, full disclosure, I'm biased. It is very hard field work, but it's great. PAC grant also has internships, as does U.S. Forest Service if you're interested in any type of forest management work. And we do a ton of work for them. Well, I did a ton of work for them with Ecological Field Services. They have a ton of consultants that come in too. So don't feel discouraged if you don't get an internship with an agency. Look at your consultants too. Okay. I'm sorry, I want to respect your time, so I'll go through this. If you have questions, feel free to reach out to me. If you do apply for a state job, feel free to reach out to me before you press that submit button, because it's a very tough and frustrating process. I applied to be a supervisor, and I was told, yeah, you're qualified. Here's an interview. But then I applied to be the person that supervised, and they said, oh, no, you don't qualify. I'm like, okay, so I qualify to be that person's boss, but I don't qualify to apply to even be considered to be the person that's working for that person. It's frustrating. Keywords are super important. When you see words and specific things listed, you need to reflect those words in your answers. They are initially screened electronically. They're not even seen by a human. So you need to think like a robot. But then next you need to think like a human, and I shouldn't say this, but like a human that doesn't necessarily know what that job is that they're reviewing, because they don't. It's HR in Harrisburg and they have no idea. I'm not wearing my DEP hat right now. They have no idea what that job is. So make sure you are putting those keywords in. And again, I can help you. I've done quite a few applications in my time with the DEP. I had some more going there, but it's gone. Um, let's see here. I apologize. If it comes to me, I'll bring it up. But it's just a tough process. And again, if you are, or oh, here, I remember now. If you apply to like a biology 3 position or an upper level government position, don't feel frustrated if you hear nothing. Understand that sometimes you need to go in as a trainee or a limited term position. And then you'll get into those positions, but sometimes you have to play the long game because if you think about it, there's biologist ones that are already in the DEP that are trained for that job. They're going to get bumped up to the 2 or 3 right away, but those jobs have to be posted anyway. And I remember applying to like 50 jobs and being like, why am I not even getting an interview? It's because they already know who they want and they have to post it anyway. So trainee positions are amazing, as are limited term. I was afraid of limited term because I was older. I was above that 26-year threshold, so I needed insurance. But if you can go without it for a little bit, or someone can provide it for you, it's a great way to get in. You do a ton of field work under those limited term positions. You can survey streams. You look for hellbenders. You do a lot of black fly suppression and tick suppression, which doesn't sound as much fun, but I promise it can be. Look into your conservation districts. They have watershed positions where you're in the streams doing all types of stream bank restoration, stream restoration. You're working with the Fish and Boat Commission. You're doing a lot of cool stuff. They have ag techs. So if you're more interested in chemistry and manure and working with those regulations to make sure that we have BMPs in place for that type of stuff, that's there. There's environmental educators, and then there's people that review permits, and some are engineers, and they put that final stamp of approval on, and they work with the DEP team. I mentioned volunteering. Be willing to travel if you want to. I really didn't. I stayed in the state besides DC. And that's part of the reason why I jumped around so much, because I needed to kind of play the waiting game because I was established here. I bought a house here. If you want to travel, do it, but you don't have to. And surpass the standard. Go above and beyond. Do your research for your interviews. Take time to really invest in yourself. Take time to take courses. Kind of always operate with the thinking that, like, you know what? There's a lot of other people that want this position too. And then when you're in the position, you're going to really excel because you're going to go above and beyond. And just take it in the direction that you want to take it to. I've learned that I've been able to do a lot of really cool things just because I asked and because I put in the initiative to do it. And it's just been great. Okay, I'm done rambling. I could probably go on for another hour, but it's almost past my bedtime. But feel free to email me. That's probably the best way. Calling, I might not answer because that's my office number, and I do telework part of the time. So, but yeah, please feel free. I love to help people try to get into the system. Or if you want to do consulting in the field, I've also done that too. And yeah. So that's all I've got. Do you all have any questions? Yes.
So, you have a lot of stuff called positions and transition.
Yeah.
Having advice for where good jobs stands.
Yeah. So look at if you want to stay in New York, look at your New York State website. Look at your, what is that called? It's like the University of Texas or like Texas A&M. Yeah. Look at that. Look at the Conservation Job Board. That's an excellent one. Look at your federal jobs. Those have been really hard for me. And I just haven't cracked that system on how to get in. But look, apply. Definitely look into specifically NRCS right now. I know they're hiring a ton of soil scientists and environmental scientists. But yeah, just look at those and look, your state will have a state site. Yeah.
RCS, that research conservation scientist, or what is that?
NRCS is the National Resource Conservation Service. It's a federal agency. They're involved with mainly agriculture, BMPs for water quality and things like that. I apologize if I'm wrong. One thing you will learn is you'll just become an alphabet soup, where whatever job you choose, you will have acronyms for everything and you won't actually remember what those acronyms stand for. So, any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you.
Thank you, Wayne, for sharing a lot of your knowledge from your experiences. What do you guys think?
Yeah, sure.
Yes.
That's
Cool. We have a small token of appreciation. Just down on the video. Alright, I don't know what colors you prefer. We only have these colors. So, the three things is we use those boss and it's in there.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So, no. Thank you. I'm gonna get one for one shop. Thank you for thank everyone for attending the exhibit.
Yeah. So I have business cards if anybody wants one of those, but I also have a plethora of stickers, waterworks stickers, hydrate or dihydrate, Seth Daily, Zip like the meeting. Tap is terrific, so one now, take a sticker.
If you want to take some pizza, you can.
I have a number. This part?
Sure.
Prepare.
I love lottery, so yeah, I had to toss my own nose. Yeah. That's bad. So, yeah,
Actually, it's more inspiring for me. I don't know. Last time I logged, I tried to click the link and I was the only one here. So,
oh no.
so but it's going to be there. So I'll wait.
Yeah. Let's see.
So